Battle Royale. So apparently poker can be a Battle Royale now. I'm not entirely sure how this works, but you can enter for 25 cents, $1, $3, or... I mean, there's only one real option here, right? Go hard or go home. Okay, so from what I can gather from glancing at the how to play, it looks like there's 3 rounds and there are 30 players. Survive half of the field and be in the top 15 to make it to stage 2. Okay. Unfortunately, at this point, I'm still setting up everything to record this tournament, and we time out and auto-fold pocket tens. And this is the moment that I see what I missed. Not off to the best start. In this hand we have 5-3 suited. This hand is not great, but the action falls to the small blinds and they make a small raise. It's just me and them. I'm in the big blind, so I make the call. The flop comes out. It's not favourable for potentially either of us, but my opponent bets first and I fold. I take a look at what the other cards would have been. We've lost our first 2 hands. Really not a great start. However, here we've got pocket 8s and our chip stack is 8-8-8. Like, what are the chances of this? This has got to be a good omen. It's got to be a sign. There's no way we're calling or folding. We make a small raise. We don't want to scare anyone off, and we go to a flop. The flop comes out king high. We can't beat a king. But it's very, very likely that we could have a king in our hand based on how we played this pre-flop. I don't want to scare my opponent off, but we have an overpair to everything except the king. We've got to try and build the pot here. Our opponent folds. But we do take down our first hand of the tournament. Ace-5 suited. Clubs. Backstory time. Clubs is my lucky suit. I've had 2 royal flushes in my time, and both have been clubs. So I think that's fair enough reason to make clubs my lucky suit. We make a raise here, and everyone folds. Okay, I mean, I guess we won the hand. And now we have Ace-7 suited. I mean, if we raise with Ace-5 suited, we should probably raise with Ace-7 suited as well. Flop comes out. It's absolutely terrible. Should be terrible for both of us. We both check. Another 4 changes nothing. I'm going to take a stab at it, and my opponent folds. We take down another one. After taking down 3 hands in a row, I get a little bit out of line here with 2-3 suited. 4 players limp, we go 4 ways to a flop, and the flop is this. At this point, I've already decided that no matter what happens, I am seeing a river. To say this is a 4-way limped pot, my opponent makes a pretty sizable bet here on the flop. Also, this guy has 8-8-8 chips, so now I just feel way less special from earlier. There's no decision to be made here, we call, and the turn is the best possible card that it could have been. All ace high hands that were trying to bet the flop to get us all off it now have to call. We've completed our straight and we have a redraw to a steel wheel. This is insane. We immediately check for deception, make it look like that we're scared of this card. We don't like seeing this ace, when in actual fact it is the perfect card for us. Unfortunately, my opponent checks back. So at this point, if the ace has scared my opponent as well, I'm probably putting him on a queen. We don't have any more time to get tricky. We've got to make a bet here. We can't just check again. Got to try and irk some value out of him. He'll fold to a huge bet, so we just make a middle-ish to small bet, and we get paid off. But I am really happy that a 3rd heart didn't come, unless it was the 5. Good lord. Following up from my lucky suit earlier, I also have a lucky hand, and that hand is Ace-10, and this one is suited in my lucky suit as well. Ace-10 generally is a fairly hit or miss hand, but I've just got such a high percentage win rate with it, it's a little bit ridiculous, and it has to mean that I am the prophet Jesus Christ. So now we have a draw to the nuts. Knowing that Ace-10 is my lucky hand, and knowing that clubs are my lucky suit, it's got to come in. So we make a bet, we take a stab at it, and this game is ridiculous. Only one move left to make. We have the nuts, we shove all in, our opponent snap calls, we knock out 2 players, collect 2 bounties, and reach a new high point of the tournament. From here I get a little bit ahead of myself on some unnecessary bluffs and some trivial hands, until finally we get dealt a monster. This is a really fast and unusual format, so I'm really not quite sure of the best way to play this hand. Obviously we're never just calling and we're never just folding. I make a minimum raise, the flop comes out, kings still look good, I make a minimum raise and my opponent folds. Maybe I could have got more value out of that hand by playing it differently. At this point, I should just fold most hands, and I notice a timer in the corner, and I realise this tournament doesn't just go on until the final 15, it goes on to a time limit, and it's whichever comes first, whether we're down to 15 players, or the timer runs out, that's when we move to stage 2. So with this huge lead that I've got at the moment, when I get dealt 6-2 offsuit, I should probably just fold, right? Right? Okay, it's time to get really brain deep here. So the main reason that I raised on this flop is because my opponent limped pre-flop. I don't think they would have done that with an ace in this specific format. From what I've seen, surely just an ace is raise worthy. You don't just limp with it. But I may be wrong, people may be playing tighter than what I've got in my head. So I see this flop and I see an ace and a 3 and I just checked my big blind. So my range is anything. So I figure if I take the initiative and lead out here, maybe my opponent will just fold and we'll win the hand. That is not what happens. In fact, I'm extremely tempted to barrel again on the turn. Because again, even if you have one of these cards, which, I mean, my opponent probably does because he limped pre-flop, I could also have any of these cards. I checked my big blind, my range is anything. I could have 8-3 offsuit. I could have 10-8. I could have ace 4 offsuit. So whichever piece of this puzzle that my opponent has, they can't feel massively confident in their hand. Like, you and I know that I've got 6-2 offsuit, and there is no way that my hand is good here. But he doesn't. I just have 2 unknown cards that could be absolutely anything. And all my opponent has done in this hand is check or call. They have not taken the initiative once. So finally it gets to the river, and I know that I am going to raise here. I think for a while about my sizing, and I try to make it look like I want to get called. So I just bet a pot size raise on the river. Yes! Woo! And we get a pretty meaty bluff through. So I said in the last hand that I wouldn't limp with an ace, but here it's not technically a limp. My opponent has raised, so this is calling a raise. It's not limping, even though it's pretty much limping. Yeah. Oh god, this flop. I want to see a river. Disclaimer for those at home: never chase a draw like this. This was a ridiculously loose call, but show me red. Oh my god! Pew pew pew! Hey, it's our lucky hand and it's got a club in it. Well, I'm okay. I'm not that superstitious, I'm not calling that. Wow, the very next hand, we are running well. Just a call here. We've got such a big chip stack that we don't really need to do anything ridiculous. We can just call with premium hands. We're going set hunting. This is a very similar situation to when we had pocket 8 on a king high board. We can beat all of the board except the 8 this time. Only on this occasion, my opponent leaves out. I think this is a pretty good spot for a re-raise. I'm very comfortable with my hands. Not that comfortable though. Alright, guess we've pissed some chips away. Suits a queen in the small blinds. Don't worry about the other card, we call. Never mind, I undersold our other cards. That's probably going to save our arse here. Opponent showed no interest in this hand on the flop, so I'm pretty confident that we've got the best hands. We'll make a raise here. Opponent called, river comes an 8. We have showdown value. There is nothing for us to do here other than check call. Pair of 3s is good. Kind of makes sense why my opponent called on the turn. And after that hand, we've qualified from stage 1. Maybe if I could have found a way to get away from that pocket 7's hand, we'd be going into round 2 a lot healthier. But we're going to shake it off and focus on stage 2. This one is 3-handed. And unlike round 1, we stay at the same table, so ranges will become a lot wider here. We have one massive stack, one small stack. We're right in the middle of the pack, so this might be interesting. Let's see how it goes. Here's round 2. Our very first hand is a suited king. Again, ignore the other cards. The short stack immediately gets the big blind, so they're definitely shoving with any 2 cards. Me and the big stack both just make the call. It's a spicy flop. The short stack is already all in, they can't act anymore, so it's just between me and King Midas over here. The king's pre-flop action does not shout an ace or a queen at me, but still, I'm going to call his raise. We've now got a club draw, and it doesn't come in, so, I mean, I guess we check. And somehow, King 3 is good. We pick up another bounty, and now we're about even with who used to be the big stack. And in the very next hand, we pick up 7-8 suited. Suited connectors are always pretty, but they're not exactly good. We flop top pair, we bet it out, the club draw comes in, and then the club draw comes in even more. There's way too many clubs here for me to confidently call this raise. We have to lay it down. Okay, now this is a hand that I'm actually quite excited to break down. I have Queen 6 offsuit. If my opponent made a sizable raise here, I probably would have just folded, but he gives me a free check, so I make said free check. The flop comes out rainbow and we connect with middle pair. They lead out here, so I'm going to call. Even if my opponent hasn't connected with the board at all, they would still have made this bet, because I checked my big blind, so clearly I don't have anything exciting here. But I think the mistake that my opponent made is that for a checked big blind, this is a good flop. They limped, I called, we both have shit. That much is clear. But the problem that my opponent is creating for themselves with such a small sized raise is that they're setting themselves up for their shit to be beaten by my shit. 10 comes on the turn. It doesn't change anything, because if I had a jack, I would still have called there, I would still have top pair. As it happens, I've been downgraded to third pair, and my opponent makes a second mistake here by checking back. It's as if they're sort of telling me how weak their hand is, and the river is an absolute blank. If this 3 changes anything, good job, you win. Amazing, well done. Your pocket 3's got there. If you're still in this hand with 4-7 off, good job. You got me. Well done. This card changes absolutely nothing, and my opponent makes a third mistake, which is bluffing on this card. The story makes no sense. I call. I have no reason to re-raise. I have showdown value, and my opponent gets caught with their pants down. We're forced to fold a few hands, and then we get dealt an ace. Doesn't matter what the other card is. We're heads up. An ace is good. And what do you know, we connect with a 6 again. My opponent checks, and I actually consider checking back here, because it's clear that my opponent, again, has absolute dog shit. But the more I think about it, this is a very draw-heavy board, and my pair of 6s is only going to get worse with the more cards I let my opponent see. So we make a bet, and our opponent immediately folds. Jack 8 offsuit, my opponent gives us a free check again, so we're going to take it, and again, we connect with middle pair. This is why you don't give the big blind free checks over and over again when your head's up. They bet the flop, they make exactly the same plays as they made when they had nothing earlier, so we bet the river, and our opponent folds again. And now we get dealt the same hand but better because it's suited, we see a flop, and my opponent shoves all in. And I think it's my turn to make a mistake here, because I think I should have called. I end up laying it down. As it turns out, we would have turned, again, a middle pair, which very well could have been good enough. And I mean, it was only like 500-600 more chips, and I had 3,900 at the time, with 2 runner-runner draws, flushes and straights, and an overcard to the board. I think I should have called there. My opponent isn't sure, so we'll be left guessing for all of eternity. Another suited picture card here, our plan is pretty clear cut. Let's raise. Okay. If we raise on this flop, what are we realistically getting called by? I try to let my opponent see 2 more cards and give them a chance to improve their hand to maybe 2 pair or a set. Unfortunately, the turn is another club. And at this point, I mean, my opponent's hand can't really get any better, right? There's 4 clubs on the board. If they don't have a club, they're folding anything, so I guess we might as well make a bet here. On the plus side, my opponent is still heavily short-stacked. They don't really have any other option other than to find a hand that they think is going to be good, shove it all in, and hope that they get lucky. Unfortunately for my opponent, they decide to make this play with 10-4 offsuit, while we have an ace. We do a little happy dance, we punch the sky, and we've made it to the finals of the Battle Royale.
And so, it comes to this. They started with 30 of us. Now remains only 5. We have all suffered. We have all lost hands.
At any rate, that is what we are going to try to do.
But we have all won enough hands to make the finals. Who will come out on top? It is time for the final table.
Sorry about that, bit of a frog in my throat there. Our very first hand back is Pocket Jacks. We plan to get this all in, If we get coolered, we get coolered. Let's see what happens. Guy shoved with pocket threes. We had a great hand here to catch him out and immediately get off to a great start on the final table. We didn't knock the player out, but we got them so low that they're pretty much going to have to shove with anything. That's exactly what happens here, and there are bounty implications here too. Another player shoves, and because we've gotten such a healthy reimbursement in our chip stack, we make the call for a potential double knockout. We just need a king or a jack. We don't get it, but one player has been knocked out. Unfortunately, their chips have not come towards us. It takes a lot of discipline for me not to play this hand. Wow, apart from that 7-2, I haven't seen a single unplayable hand at this final table. I'm just going to open shove with these pocket sixes here. It worked well for this guy. He doubled up and got a bounty by open shoving with pocket sixes earlier and just coolering pocket fives. Let's see if lightning can strike twice. We get a call, and what do you know? We cooler pocket fours. Lightning almost struck twice. It kind of did. The player gets knocked out, and oh my god, 3 out of 5 hands have been pocket pairs. Let's just make things really simple. We will shove as soon as the option comes to us, and oh my word, what is going on? I can't even be mad about that. The very next hand is Jack 3 suited. We're 3-handed. I consider just open ripping it, but settle on a call. We see a flop and make a pair of threes. It's middle pair on this board. Now we're going to rip it. My opponent has faith in my lucky suit of clubs and makes the call. Unfortunately, clubs is only lucky for me. We double up. We've only played like 5 hands, and this final table is swing. Now we have a terrible hand, but our opponent gives us a free check, so we take our check and flop top 2 pair. Need I say it again? Unfortunately, the flop is all clubs. We don't have a club, obviously, and we might get beaten up on this hand. Opponent calls. Okay, only 1 club. Alright, lucky hand. Now would be a great time to be lucky. My lucky hand takes full credit for that. It willed my opponent 69 into existence. Maybe Jack 3 of hearts should be my lucky hand. It saved my ass enough times. Guess we'll shove with it and see if it's lucky. I guess it is. Now we've got the Brad Owens again. This time I think we'll min-raise, let our opponents hang themselves. Oh, wow! Jacks against 3s again! We take it down, and this final table continues to be up and down like a whore's knickers. In the very next hand, we've got Jack 2 offsuit. It goes fold shove. Because this player's shove is so small, we just call it, and man, have Jacks been pulling their weight today. 3 becomes 2, and we've got just 1 more player to get through to take the top prize. The player's short stacked, he's got to shove. We call with Queen 7 offsuit, and we are the underdog. 7, yes! 8, no! Opponent doubles up, we have a game. The next relevant hand is Jack 8 suited. In hindsight, I probably should have raised pre-flop here. But hey, Jacks have been working so far, so we call and we see a flop. Flop is all diamonds, I'm first to act. I'm going to take a bit of a gamble here and lead out. In theory, my opponent should be scared here, but if they re-raise, they probably have at least 1 diamond, and it does kind of handcuff me. I think I played this hand terribly. Lucky Sue, can you bail me out? I'm on the back foot now, and I need to make some moves. I opt to string my opponent along here with a minimum raise. I really do think at this point there are less hands that my opponent would fold than call with, so I might as well get a little bit of extra cheddar cheese here. The flop comes out, it's kind of a whole load of nothing. Checking doesn't really do anything for us here. I think my only real option that might give my opponent something to think about is to shove. So that's what I do, and my opponent folds. Baby steps, slowly dragging 1 in. And in this hand we have Queen 8 offsuit. Unfortunately it's not Jack 8 offsuit, which has been absolutely dominating, but it's worth calling with. And I kind of fall on my own sword here because I do the one thing that I've been advising against doing this entire tournament. I give the big blind a free check. But the flop comes out pretty nice. We flop top 2 pair. This hand and this flop is strong enough that if my opponent has a jack, good game. By the end of this hand, all of the money is probably going in the middle. Opponent checks, I check back. I'm underrepresenting my hand. My opponent checking back that flop, and it's a very narrow flop to begin with. That tells me that they've got absolute dog shit. Even if they have 2 hearts, I think they bet that flop. Turn is a 10 of hearts, completing the flush draw that we were just talking about. My opponent checks, he's been playing this hand very passively, and I keep going on my theory that my opponent's got dog shit, so I make a raise. Eventually our opponent calls. The river is an ace. I mean, this is just a terrible, terrible board. Flushes get there, there's full houses open, and there's 4 to a straight on the board as well. I don't feel good about my 2 pair, and it's more than possible that my opponent could just have an ace. But when my opponent makes a huge overbet shove on the river, alarm bells are just ringing in my head. Surely he'd be trying to string me along here, surely. There's so many draws out there, even if he has one of these draws, there's a draw that's better. All I'm realistically trying to do here is justify calling, which is what I ultimately do. But my opponent made the flush on the turn, which is where I bet, assuming that I was stringing him along, but actually he just called to give me a chance to improve on the river, and then shoved it in my face when this really good card that might have improved my hand came out. My opponent had a very short stack for most of this final table, but I can't fault the way that he played. My opponent played very well, and I lost to a better player. The most painful place to finish is always second. Coming so close yet so far is always really painful. But we shake it off and move on to the next one. And we made the funny number. We made $69 in this tournament. We multiplied our buy-in by 7, so I will absolutely take that. I've only just started this channel, this is my 2nd video up. Please, by all means, if you see something that you thought could have been done better, or if you have any sort of criticism, please let me know in the comments and I will respond to all of them. And if you enjoyed your little journey with me, please consider hitting the like or subscribe button, or both, ideally. You can even ring the bell, that'd be fun. I would really appreciate it. Again, I'm still sort of flying blind, I don't really know how to do a YouTube, but what matters is you got this far, and I really appreciate that. I hope you enjoyed the video. This was a little bit of a tipsy commentary, so apologies. But thank you so much for watching. There'll be plenty of more poker content, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.